You're listening to episode 295 of the Master Your Mind, Business, and Life podcast. Communication seems to be a theme that's coming up in my life recently, but personal life aside, communication is a strength that we all need to continuously develop in life. Thankfully for us, this week's guest is helping us learn how to communicate effectively, grow into a positive mindset even when the situation feels limiting, and also how we can be seen and heard. Kass Thomas is a successful business entrepreneur and communication expert. The depth and range of her life and career experiences inspires people to explore more choices and find the changes they are looking for. It is her mission in life to strengthen the unity of choice and change. She inspires clients to discover their unique brand of magic. This week's episode is brought to you by Spiritually Seeking. When you go to spiritually-seeking.com and enter the promo code podcast at checkout, you can save 20% on items such as card readings, life guidance sessions, and numerology report. Simply head to spiritually-seeking.com and enter the promo code podcast at checkout. Are you ready to meet the beautifully energetic Kass Thomas? You know what to do. Tune in, turn it up, let's go.
Conversations with everyday world shifters, truth seekers, and rule breakers. Here's your host, Lauren Smith.
Hey, Kass, welcome to the show. I am excited to have you join me today.
Thank you so much. It is a delight and pleasure to be here with you.
Oh, well, Kass, you serenaded me with the most amazing song to get our conversation started with these two lovely men. But aside of that, you're an entrepreneur, an author, a life coach, a radio personality, an access conscious facilitator, just to name a few. I'm sure there is more, but I'm curious to know, was the entrepreneur life always part of your path? Is this what, say, 18-year-old Kass saw doing with her life?
Yes, it actually has been always a part of my life. I'm so glad you asked that question because a lot of times we don't even acknowledge that, right? I was just thinking in grad school when I started taking theatrical management courses, my professor was writing notes about me while I was doing the presentation in French. And I said to her, no, that's not what I said. And she said, what do you speak French? And we started a theater together.
Wow.
She was opening up a new theater off Broadway theater. So we started a theater together. And I was already with my first husband and he was a director. So we did do some stuff together. So I guess, yes, entrepreneurial has been part of my life.
Always been there. Yeah. So what got you to shifting your focus into this? Because do you still own that theater?
No, however, it did. One of the things, sometimes we have so many experiences in different fields that we don't really, they keep knocking on our door. We keep answering the door. And then we realize, wow, okay, I've worked with directors and done videos. And my ex-husband was a theater director as well, off Broadway, great show with Morgan Freeman's former wife. Yeah, and Morgan Freeman was doing his the Driving Miss Daisy at the time on off Broadway. Yes. So he would run over after the show and see how we were doing with the theater.
Oh my gosh.
And, yeah, years. Then I went into the hotel industry for many years, almost 10 years. And a year and a half later, I moved to Italy and there was an American guy here. And he was like, hey, you've worked in management and in hospitality. I want to do a film. Can we open up a production company together? So it's, the entertainment industry has always been
there.
Yeah. And it's such an interesting way to communicate with people through entertainment.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note that we do have that power to change tracks. Like, I think sometimes we have this preconceived notion that where we are is where we're going to have to stay and to be. I know for me growing up, it was the men in my family, like you get one job, you stick with it for the rest of your life. And unless something happens to that job, you don't really have a reason to go elsewhere. And that was what was kind of sold to me as a child, that you find it, you stick with it. And I think we sometimes forget that we have the permission and we have the power to step outside of it and try something new. But a lot of that starts with a mindset shift first. So how
Absolutely.
do we shift and to really be okay with saying like, okay, wait a second, this isn't working for me, or hey, I was meant for something more. And how do we get into that frame of mind?
Absolutely. And, I love that you're talking about stepping out because I do 3 steps program. Step
Oh,
in your
yes.
life, step up and recognize your talents and abilities, and step out with different topics. And it's
Oh,
absolutely the willingness to choose things that are in line with you, in line with your
mhm.
vibration. That's why I love that mind, business, and your life, because a
Yeah,
lot of times, just like you said, we're following somebody else's pathway, you
right.
know? And so maybe it's not just the same job. I just want to say it may be the same career.
Yes.
That you're in this business, in this type of business. So to continue that,
Yeah.
and there's something that shows up that is a discomfort. It may show up emotionally. It may show up even as an illness. It may
Mm.
show up as, depression. But when something like that shows up in your life, and it took me a while to remember to ask this question, is this the change I've been asking for?
Mm.
Showing up in a different way than I expected. Because you might be losing a job, you might be
Yeah.
changing partners, you might have had an accident, something may have shown up, and it's sort of like your world, your life shaking you to say, hey, hello, will you consider us? Will you
Mm.
consider the life? Will you consider what brings you ease? What brings you joy? What makes you happy? And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that you cannot work with that and turn that into a business that works for you. Now, it
Yeah.
might not always be a business that brings you money, but it doesn't mean you only have to have one business,
That's
because
true.
there might be a business that you have that brings you so much joy that it allows you to go into your other business and make lots of money because you're such an invitation. So just
Yes.
consider
That,
that.
that is a really great point too, because I think that's also something that's sold to business owners, entrepreneurs, is like you find your niche and you stick with that. And for me as a person, I find myself getting antsy. I am very much that person. It's like, okay, now I've done something. What's next? So to then be like, well, I was this and now I'm that. I can only be this, like I can only be a social media marketer for the rest of my life, but I'm done being a social media marketer. What else is there for me? So I think, is this like the whole stepping in? Is that like step one, is stepping into your possibilities then?
Absolutely. And acknowledging how it is that you see the world, you know
Mm,
what I mean? Which is unique. A lot of
yeah.
times we consider that something that's wrong, a limitation, something that we don't want to share with people. But there's nobody that does you better than you. There's
Mm,
nobody that does you like you. So
yeah.
when you step in and acknowledge, and it may be, you said, anxiety or something like that, that might be a unique brand of magic that you have, that
Mm,
when something is knocking at your door or something is popping up for you or something is right in front of your eyes,
yeah.
that you're like not
Yeah.
even acknowledging that. How does that show up for you? So it's a great question to say, what exactly is going on here, that if I weren't being distracted, right,
Yeah.
by anxiety or something, I would actually see it. And the moment you ask something like that, someone will call you, right? I
Yeah.
sometimes I do, workshops on how to develop more money in your life.
Yeah.
And somebody's phone will ring during the workshop and they get a little embarrassed and try to, click off the phone. I said, don't click off the phone.
Yeah.
Answer that phone. We're working
You
on
just
this.
asked. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think that's also something that we're really great at, is ignoring it for so long. And this may, by the time this come out, I don't remember the order of episodes, but yesterday I spoke to Bob Doyle, and he is a featured expert on the book The Secret. He was in the movie. And it's been in the back of my mind of leaning more into brain rewiring. So within 1 week, 3 guests pop up in my emails, all wanting to talk about brain rewiring. And I brushed it off. Like, it was like one of those, like, okay, like have this conversation. I'm interested. I start reading the books, right? And then it's like I set it to the side. And then it was like the universe was like, knock, knock, knock. Did you not hear me? So then it was like I have this like deja vu Groundhog Day type thing where I'm having almost the same repeat day happen But this time it was like, oh, the universe is like, okay, what do you need? Like a big name to come in. And like, so then there was like Bob Doyle, he comes in and he's shifting away from the law of attraction into brain rewiring. And I just had that moment. I was like, how many more times do you need this to come up to listen to
Absolutely.
it?
And it will come up again in a different
Right.
way. So
Yeah.
it's not
Oh,
every,
it
sometimes
did.
people think,
Yes, Cass, last night I was listening to a Joe Rogan podcast with Jewel on it, and I don't even know why. Like I have no idea what made me click on it, and she was talking about brain rewiring, and I was like, it's like, so it's like it's going to keep coming up. It will keep coming up, and I think it's important to pay attention and then to lean in, because the more you lean away, it's like the universe is like, no, 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 like I'm going to pull you back.
exactly. So that's that stepping in. And so you're
Yeah.
talking about to step up and acknowledge, okay, great. This is what's showing up for me. How would I like to step out and be seen and heard in the world and allow others to be seen and heard in the world in a very different way? And we're all here on this planet at this time. So we're home. And
Yes.
so it's nice when you're home and you're willing to really let your vibe get out there in the world. And I just wanted to say one thing about, working in social media, how it's not such a limited
Yeah.
field. Hello.
Yeah.
How many? So when you're finished with the brain rewiring, there'll be like 100 other things
100
that you
more
can do
things.
because
Yeah.
because you have so
Yeah.
much, or do coaching on that. What a
Exactly.
contribution can that be to people as well?
It's so true. But what you had just touched on of being seen and heard, I mean, clearly with your background and clearly with this podcast, I'm a huge proponent of communication. And I'm unsure though that healthy communication is really taught to us throughout life as a life skill, because many people, they come from families who had communication issues. Some come from families where they were screamed at, right? It was a screaming family. So that screaming is how they're heard. Or maybe they retreat into silence because they feel like they're not being heard. So why say anything? So how can we effectively communicate so that we are being heard, but also seen at the same time?
I work so much with communication. My first book is 7 Steps to Flawless Communication, right?
Mm.
And the first phase, the first 2 steps are tricky ways to invite people to have a presence in their life with themselves. And communication, all of it starts with us. If you're willing to be in communication with yourself and recognize who and what you are, and also to connect with your intuition, and be willing to recognize when something is the right choice for you. It doesn't mean it's the right choice for everyone, but it is the right choice for you. And just like you said, which I know that you are so doing this now, just like you said, I don't know why I was listening to that last night.
Yeah.
I just chose to start listening to this last night and I don't know why. And then all of a sudden, boom, you
Pulls you in.
obviously connected with you because
Yeah.
you would have chosen that moment to make a phone call when they started talking about brain rewiring.
Right.
Had you not been connected with you and say, okay, great. Thank you for that. That's what I
Yeah.
wanted to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. How do
So
you
that
think
is
that
the advice.
how do you think that we strengthen our intuition though? Because it is very easy to kind of silence that voice. Or on the flip side, people are like, I don't know if it's my intuition, or is it my fear, right? Is it my intuition saying no, 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 or is it my fear and my ego saying no, 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 no?
But it's a tricky way. So one of the ways is the step 2 in that 7 Steps book is to talk to your body. And a lot of people say, I don't really get anything from my body. Well, when you eat something, when you go to eat, how do you know when it's time to eat? How do you know when it's time to sleep? How do you know, when it's time to go wash your hands, as the British say? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you are actually connected with your intuition, and you're so right. There's so many things from our past that may have shown up that we were made wrong for, but it was actually our knowing. And I just say this, I remember when I was 6 years old, we were changing houses, and my dad and my uncles were outside, and I just walked up to them and said, "Are you guys drunk?" And my mom, the one time in life, she gave me a smack.
Yeah.
So how many times do we made wrong for actually expressing something that
Right.
we know, right?
Mm.
So part of that intuition also in talking to your body is knowing if somebody is actually able to hear it. And that's what I do in my communication. If we can look at things from other people's perspectives, if we're being yelled at all the time by your parents, is it because they were yelled at also?
Right.
And is that what they consider the way to communicate? I do a lot of workshops around the world. I had two women working together, and one was, being really loud,
Yeah.
and the other one said to me, "Look, I don't want to work with her because I don't want anyone to be loud with me." And the other one said, "I'm so sorry. They always told me I talk too softly." You know what I mean? So that's why I'm
Oh,
talking loud with you, right? You know what I
right.
mean? So just giving an example of communication is always a two-way street.
Mm.
It starts with you, but it's not just about getting your point across to people. And this is in business too, especially for business managing. It's also being willing to hear what other people are communicating to you. And it's not always just through the words that they are saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I think it's like body language and tone and it all comes together. But listening is a skill. It's a skill that I feel I have developed. I can listen back even on older podcast episodes when I started, right? And I've noticed just how I have grown as a listener and communicator. But it's a skill that we have to work on. What makes a good listener, do you think? And how, if you're on the receiving end, can you help someone feel heard and seen?
Well, it's sometimes we are looking at trying to be interesting,
Mm,
you know, and becoming a good listener is to be interested.
yeah.
My each and every one of us, like I said, has our, in business we say your unique selling point, and
Right.
I talk about your unique brand of magic,
Yeah.
and one of the ways of connecting with you and really being present with your intuition, the step one in the 7 steps, is what is your unique brand of magic? What is
Mm,
the way you do something that maybe everyone on the planet does? Well, maybe not everyone brushes their teeth, but it could be something like that,
right.
right?
Right.
But how do you do it in a different way? What do you do when you wake up? We all wake up in the morning, hopefully, right? What do you do that's in a different way? It's a subtle way of getting people to recognize that even if you're doing the same job, the same business, the same activities as someone else, the way you do it is quite unique, right? I told you
Mm.
we're preparing this song, right, for
Yes.
my Dancing with Riches
I
book.
got the little clip from it. It was like seriously the best start to my day. Thank you so much for that.
But I'm not a professional singer. I've worked with professional singers. That's another part of the sort of live events and films
Right.
and stuff. I've worked with professional singers, and they always love singing with me because they don't feel like there's anyone intimidated by it. But the way I sing, as not a professional singer, is different. My
Yeah.
voice is different, the way I communicate. So you don't have to be as good as someone else because
Mm,
someone else's job is already taken. They're them.
yeah.
you know, your job is your life, is that's your business, and you're willing to really acknowledge your magic. So that is something. It's a small thing to notice, just listing some of the things that maybe you think you've done wrong.
Mm,
Maybe you've been accused of doing wrong. My family used to tell me, "You give everything away. We buy you stuff, you give it all away."
mm,
My dad told me, You're so sensitive to people when they're, you cry at the drop of a hat.
yeah.
My teachers used to tell my parents, "She's doing great in school. Her grades are great, but she talks to everyone."
Yeah.
So she
As if this is
talks
like
to
a bad
everyone.
thing, right? Like
It talks to everyone, always talking to everyone, gives everything away, and very sensitive. And what do? I travel the world. I do lots of things online, being really sensitive to what's going on with people and what will be a contribution to them,
right?
talking to everyone and anyone, right?
Yes.
And giving everything away that I can. So
Yeah.
so you might want to, how do you connect with your intuition? Maybe you want to, this is one of the things I talk about the workshop, write down what maybe you feel is a bad thing about you or limitation, put it aside and then look at it later and see if you could see it from a different perspective. What have you identified as something that is not a quality that actually is a quality for you? And I hope that example is a contribution.
No, I think that's amazing, and it resonates with me. And right now, I have two young daughters who are always the chatty Cathys in school, right? They get the great grades, and it's always like, oh well, they were talking, and I'm like, okay, but I'm not going to punish them for talking. I may say, make sure the other students finish their work too. So, like, you're not being distracting to them. That's different. But I don't want to repress their voice. That's
Please.
not right. I want them to know there is power in using your voice. And I think a lot of times, like when we're trying to stand up to these societal norms of what's good, what's bad, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, we are repressing a lot of our magic, our innate God-given gifts that, we're supposed to share with the world. But then when someone tells you don't, and here we go to that brain rewiring, right? Like you're creating that neuro pathway that then every time it clicks back to you and you're like, no, 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 don't do that. Don't do that because someone else told you no. But it's your
Absolutely.
inner truth saying, no, say it, do it. Like, this is
Exactly.
good.
Exactly. And what is the contribution that your daughters are being to those other students that maybe nobody would talk to? Or
Right.
maybe the tone of their voice is something that relaxes them, those
Mm,
students. So, how do we get back to our intuition? Because it's not like we haven't already always had it,
yeah.
but we have, pushed it back, stepped it back. And that is part of that stepping up, that second step, stepping up in your life and acknowledging how many things that you have been aware of that maybe are beyond definition, you know what I mean? Maybe
Mm,
are beyond description, categorization, however,
yeah.
they've got you to where you are. Every single thing that we've done, whether it's been quote unquote a failure and mistake or a mistake,
Yeah.
has got you to where you are now. And now, what are the various possibilities that could show up in your life that will give you more choices to really
Mm.
be a contribution to you, to be a contribution to others and to the world? Yeah.
So when we step out, when we're on the third step, I imagine that you're stepping out as your most authentic self at this point because you have stepped in, you've stepped up, and then now it's time to step out. So what do you have to do to then step out and make sure that, like, hey, you have strong boundaries, right? Like you're not going to step back like 10 steps, because I think sometimes we'll put our toe out, right? Like kind of test the waters, and it's like, oh gosh, I can't do this. And maybe all those fears come back up, or that inner voice, or those stories that our parents told us, or someone else has like imprinted on us. We can want to take that step back. So, how do we really step out then?
And how often do we want to step back when we step out without stepping in first? And that's
Ooh,
why it's always something that I start with having people really connect with their vibe, so that they know that they can never be wrong. They
mm,
may be sorry that it was not convenient for someone else. But what works for you, you have to really be clear about that, so that when you begin stepping up and acknowledging the various things, stepping out, you never feel wrong. Even if somebody says something that seems like a judgment, like those things I mentioned,
right.
that seems like a judgment, you're willing to see it from a different perspective, because you're not only willing to be seen and willing to be heard when you step out, you're actually willing to see and hear other people.
And
And
you're
that's why I
changing
invite,
perception.
absolutely. And that's why I invite people to look. I mean, I can tell you 25 things that are magical about you.
Yeah.
Are
Back
you
to
able to
yeah,
see?
yes.
And
Yes.
we're not always able and willing to note what's magical about us. But
Mm,
that is, and sometimes people think, oh, I don't want to be, so concentrated on myself. But that gives you such a potency and
yeah.
a genuine and authentic connection with you, that you recognize, you know what, I'm different and I've got some magic. So other people do too. And the
Mm,
way you approach other people, even if they seem to be quote unquote offensive, the way you approach them is without resistance and without putting up walls and barriers and boundaries and saying, wow, what made you say that?
yeah.
And they're waiting for you to be into reaction, but you're not. because you know that there's every experience that shows up for you is a contribution. Like Nelson Mandela said, you can't lose. You either win or you learn something.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. And I think it's also important to note that when we're talking about our contributions, we kind of have to get clear on the person that we want to be. I think that we can get stuck in the person that we are, or those stories that we tell ourselves. How do you get clear on the contribution that you want to even bring to the world, and doing that?
Yeah, there's different ways, and there's so many different ways. I don't give just one answer. I've got three, of course, right? So,
Yeah,
but
because it all
one
works for
is
different. Yeah.
you can ask yourself, what is my mission in life? Why am I here?
Mm,
If today were the first day or the last day of my life, what would I like to leave on this in this world? And if I'm gone, when I'm gone, what is it that I would like people to remember about me? You
yeah.
know, there's so many different ways to go about this, and 100 others, but this perhaps is what popped for me, following my intuition. So hopefully, and I love the breath you took
Yeah.
when I said that. When I'm gone, she was such a lovely person. This is what the gift she was for me. And
Mm,
doesn't that nurture your being here?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think that's
yeah.
so beautiful. And it's sometimes we just need to take those mindful moments too, to just really really lean into our own magic. And like you said before, it's very easy to identify other people's magic. I think we're so great at that. Just like when that friend calls you and she's having the worst day ever and you give her the best advice ever. And then you're like, dang, why don't I give myself that advice? Like, why am I not listening to myself? We have this innate ability to preach, but not often practice what we preach. And I always sometimes have to put myself in check. And I'm like, okay, am I practicing when I preach? But I need to preach, but I need to practice as well. It can go both ways. You can speak about it while you're going through it and be like, I'm learning, right? The best learners are always learning. The best healers are always healing. It's like that onion that just keeps being pulled back.
Absolutely. And I love that you listen to your podcast, because you might say, oh, who is that doing that podcast? Is
Yeah.
that me? Did I
Yeah.
say that?
It happens when I listen to playback sometimes, because like as you and I are having the conversation, I'm present in the moment. So I'm focused on all of things. Like all of my senses are aware. My brain is thinking of questions, being engaged. But when I go back as a listener and like I'm maybe editing or trying to pull quotes out, I have a different experience. I pick up on different things that maybe I missed the first time, or I'm like, whoa, that was good. Whether it's from you or me, I'm like, who was that talking? But I also have recognized the more that I open myself up, it's more channeled through me. I can feel the message channeled through me, and it's not my ego talking. It's not, just a show or a facade that I'm putting on. It's my authentic self. Therefore, authenticity really breathes and shines my full light in this zone. And sometimes I think you don't really notice it while you're in it, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
We know what we were and what we are is very active. And also, once you articulate something or write it down, then it gets such clarity to the
Oh
universe,
yeah.
God, Allah, Buddha, whoever, you know what I mean? And the
Yeah.
angels and the trees and the birds and the bees. And so what starts appearing in your life has a lot more resonance with what you were willing to acknowledge. Oh, this is what you'd like to see. Boom.
Mm.
Oh, this is what he would like to receive. Boom. And it starts showing up. It's like before we're willing to acknowledge something, the presence or the existence of something, how can we see the gifts that are already in our lives that we can use? So
Yeah.
choosing in every 10 seconds, what is it that will bring you more ease, more joy, and more glory in your life will be amazing.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of times people are still stuck in that we think, feel, and then act, but actually we feel first, and whether we are conscious of it or not, that's actually what happens. We feel first, then we think, and then we act. So, like you said, your body's always talking to you. It's that intuition. So you know it. You know it in your gut when something is good or bad. And you may not have a reason attached to why it is, but not everything needs a reason. Just like no is a statement by itself, right? Like we don't need to have an excuse attached to it. No means no. So I think we sometimes forget about that.
And that's genius. It's total genius, what you said. And it's so true also for me, is we take these sensations, our bodies are these sensorial organisms that receive everything. And then if we try to, like you say, filter it into, that 10% of our brain called the
Yeah.
mind, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Then how much are we reducing? How much have we left out?
Right.
How often do we try to fit ourselves into that little field? So, like you said, if it's just like, nope, I'm not exactly sure why, but nope, not at the moment. Sorry,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
And you got
keep
to be
going.
confident in self in that too, because I think, I've said no so many times and someone's like, but why? And it's like, I don't really owe you an explanation, but if you must know, I don't know why. It's just my body telling me no. And that may sound odd to you, but I am very convicted in self and I know myself, and it's a boundary at that point. But Kass,
Well, it's also an awareness. And you know what? The
yeah.
next time it shows up for you, just a little tip, you might say, it might not have anything to do with me, why I said no. Maybe something's
Oh,
going to show up in your life,
that's
since I
true.
didn't say yes to you, that wouldn't have had the space to show up had I not said no. So
Yes.
let me know, keep me informed.
Well, that actually happened. My friend recently invited me to a comedy club in DC, and it was just going to be a lot of logistics getting there, and it was also my oldest daughter's birthday, and I was like, I just have to say no. Like it was like I have made it, yes, but like it felt like too much for what it was. Comes to find out, she gets a new boyfriend. He invites her to on a vacation the same time period. So there it was. Like, like I could have made it happen, but hey, since I said no, something else opened up for her. So you're right. It does happen. It happens
Absolutely.
often.
And just being willing to say, truth. Truth is a great question to ask. Truth, yes. Truth, no. Truth, do I expand my business in this direction? Truth, yes. Truth, no. Truth, do I choose
Ooh.
this for my dinner? Truth, yes. Truth, no. And your body will, that talking to your body, when you start stepping into your life, you begin to know a language that your body communicates to you with,
Yes.
that only the two of you know. And it's once you begin that stepping in and connecting with you, you never get bored again.
Mm.
And you actually never run into boring people. It's
Oh
amazing.
yeah. Man, and who wants to go back to a boring person after after you've had so many interesting people in life, like
And you're an invitation for what and whom you considered boring. You say, wow, how could you possibly be boring? I wonder what your unique brand of magic is that
yeah,
not yet,
yes, hasn't been
And
pulled out of you yet, right?
and when you're willing to approach someone like that, the communication just expands beyond. And this is
Oh,
about stepping out. Yeah.
I love that. Cass, tell us about your new book, Dances with the Riches.
Dancing with
Oh,
Riches.
Dancing with
Dancing with
Riches.
Riches.
Dancing Riches.
Yes. Yes. It's a book. It just came out in English. Believe it or not, it came out in French 2 years ago. I wrote it in English, but a French publisher wanted it first. And it's a how-to book. Just the things what we have been talking about. Also, how to be in communion with yourself, with your body. A lot of times we have judgments about our body in relationships with people, with money and business, and how to know how to live your life purposefully. And there's so many of the tools of access consciousness questions. It's not something that you have to follow. It's not the answer. It's the question that ignites your answer that only you know for you. So it's a book about how to be in line with the energy of change in the various areas of your life. And it's really great. It just came out in Spanish as well, and probably be coming out in a couple of other languages.
Crushing it.
And I'm so grateful for the contribution it's being to people's life, because like this, I give lots of examples of different things that have come up in my life
Yeah.
in those various areas, and then show you how to find out which is the right choice for you, that you can make, that will give you, like you were saying, that confidence to know that you've always known
Yes.
what's best for you. Yeah.
Oh, well, I know we're getting limited on time, but you just have so much more to offer our audience. Will you tell them where they can grab your books and also to connect with you further?
Absolutely. Well, the Dancing with Riches book in English, you can get that on Amazon. If you're in the States, you can also find it at Barnes and Noble, or Schiffer Publishing published that out of Pennsylvania. And you can find in other languages there too. And my first book is also on Amazon, Seven Steps to Flawless Communication. It's so small, honey. It's so small. You can read it in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, but I do have workshops where you can really connect with that on there. And you can find me on kassthomas.com. And if people go there, there is a free gift for them on our website. And also that we talked about the 3 steps. So 3steps.us. It's an amazing program with a different topic every month and guests from around the world to just invite you to step in, step up, and step out.
How
Yeah.
beautiful. I'll be sure to link all of those in this week's episode
Thank you.
notes so that our audience has some easy clicks to find you and grab your book. Kass, I just love the work that you're doing. You're such a bright light and you're what I like to call a world shifter. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. And thank everyone for listening.
Isn't Kass such a special soul? I learned so much from her and hope you did too. Remember to connect with Kass on your favorite social media site. I've linked her website and social channels on this week's episode notes found on mindbizlife.com. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend and be sure to leave the podcast a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever it is that you tune in and turn it up. I'm back on Friday for another episode of Fuel Your Life Friday. But until then, remember, every level of life is an opportunity to grow. Be well, my friend.